All right, welcome back to RJK English and Siddhartha. We're going to finish off chapter 11 this time, which is Om. We talked about last time about whether goals are important based on Siddhartha and also the need to be listened to. We also saw that Vasudeva is a little bit more than Siddhartha had noticed before. And we're noticing that Siddhartha he's changed since realizing he had a son, and he's changed since going through heartbreak. All right, let's keep moving. Remember to like and subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you'll know when there's other videos. Go to RJK English on Facebook to have even more discussion. All right. So, do you hear? So, Vasudeva takes Siddhartha over to the river and says, "You need to listen more." Let's go back. You have heard it laugh, but you have not heard everything. Let us listen. You will hear more. They listened. And they realized that the river was singing of sadness. Okay, so down here. Do you hear? Asked Vasudeva's mute glance. Siddhartha nodded. Listen better, whispered Vasudeva. Siddhartha tried to listen better. The picture of his father, his own picture, and the picture of his son all flowed into each other. Kamala's picture also appeared and flowed on, and the picture of Govinda and others emerged and passed on. They all became part of the river. It was the goal of all of them, yearning, desiring, suffering, and the river's voice was full of longing, full of smarting woe, full of insatiable desire. The river flowed on towards its goal. Siddhartha saw the river hasten, made up of himself and his relatives and all the people he had ever seen. All the waves and water hastened, suffering, towards goals, many goals, to the waterfall, to the sea, to the current, to the ocean. And all goals were reached, and each one was succeeded by another. Here's that circle, that wheel again. The water changed to vapor and rose, became rain and came down again, became spring, brook and river, changed anew, flowed anew. But the yearning voice had altered. It still echoed sorrowfully, searchingly, but other voices accompanied it, voices of pleasure and sorrow, good and evil voices, laughing and lamenting voices, hundreds of voices, thousands of voices. By the way, when we're done with this, you should listen to the song by Radiohead called Pyramid Song. See if it doesn't have the same feel. It's a little bit more depressing, but it's beautiful and it kind of has the same feel to it. Okay, Siddhartha listened. He was now listening intently, completely absorbed, quite empty, taking in everything. He felt that he had now completely learned the art of listening. He had often heard all this before, all these numerous voices in the river, but today they sounded different. He could no longer distinguish the different voices, the merry voice from the weeping voice, the childish voice from the manly voice. They all belonged to each other. The lament of those who yearn, the laughter of the wise, the cry of indignation and the groan of the dying. They were all interwoven and interlocked, entwined in 1,000 ways. And all the voices, all the goals, all the yearnings, all the sorrows, all the pleasures, all the good and evil, all of them together was the world. All of them together was the stream of events, the music of life. Do you see this tapestry being woven here? When Siddhartha listened attentively to this river, to this song of 1,000 voices, when he did not listen to the sorrow or laughter, when he did not bind his soul to any one particular voice and absorb it in his self, but heard them all, the whole, the unity, then the great song of 1,000 voices consisted of one word: Om, perfection. Do you hear? Asked Vasudeva's glance once again. Now, I'm going to comment here. Do you see that when he heard the sorrow of the river, he noticed the river was trying to reach its goal? The river mirrored that part of life. And he could focus on a particular voice. Kind of like if you watch X-Men and you see Professor X use his whatever cerebro, and it goes out in the world and he can hear all the voices, but then he can focus on a particular one. Kind of like that. He can focus on particulars, but when he didn't, he could hear the whole song. And what did it say? It said Om. It was perfection. Do you hear? Asked Vasudeva's glance once again. Vasudeva's smile was radiant. It hovered brightly in all the wrinkles of his old face, as the Om hovered over all the voices of the river. His smile was radiant as he looked at his friend, and now the same smile appeared on Siddhartha's face. His wound was healing. His pain was dispersing. His self had merged into unity. From that hour, Siddhartha ceased to fight against his destiny. There shone on his face the serenity of knowledge, of one who is no longer confronted with conflict of desires, who has found salvation, who is in harmony with the stream of events, with the stream of life, full of sympathy and compassion, surrendering himself to the stream, belonging to the unity of all things. As Vasudeva rose from the seat on the riverbank, when he looked into Siddhartha's eyes and saw the serenity of knowledge shining in them, he touched his shoulder gently in his kind, protective way and said, "I have waited for this hour, my friend. Now that it has arrived, let me go. I have been Vasudeva, the ferryman, for a long time. Now it's over. Farewell, hut. Farewell, river. Farewell, Siddhartha." Siddhartha bowed low before the departing man. "I knew it," he said softly. "Are you going into the woods?" "Yes, I'm going into the woods. I'm going into the unity of all things," said Vasudeva, radiant. And so he went away. Siddhartha watched him. With great joy and gravity he watched him, saw his steps full of peace, his face glowing, his form full of light. Why did Vasudeva leave? In a way, we could kind of say it's because in the story, Vasudeva isn't needed anymore for the story. Could be. There is also, just as we saw at the beginning, where did Siddhartha go when he wanted to become an ascetic? He went into the forest. Where did Ram go when he was kicked out of his kingdom in the Ramayana? He goes into the forest. In all of our stories, where do people go when they're kicked out of places? They go to the forest. Where did Luke go in the original Star Wars when he needed to learn? He went to the jungle planet where he learned from Yoda, right? There's so many stories like this. People have to go to the forest. Why? Because it's not civilization. The forest is where all life is, and it's in its wild form. In Hindu philosophy and in the idea of even the caste system, civilization is where you're bound to others. You fulfill a role. You are a father. You are a brother. We all experience this, whether we're in the Hindu system or not. We're part of this world. And then when you need to not be part of it, when you need to get closer to Brahman or to God, you leave and you go to the forest. Why? Because it's outside of civilization. You lose touch. You no longer have the safety of the world. You become yourself. You become an individual in that place. That's what the forest is. And Vasudeva, what was Vasudeva? Was he a person? I think he was, but he had reached something and he needed to go to the woods to become part of the unity of all things, which he had learned from the river. And his life was over. So just something to think about. All right, that's the end of chapter 11. Next video, we're going to start on chapter 12, which is the final chapter. So we're going to finish up Siddhartha. All right, great job. You're doing awesome. You're almost through this book. All right, see you next time.